เอาละค่ะและเดี๋ยวในช่วงนี้นะคะเราจะเข้าสู่กับอีกหนึ่งหัวข้อสำคัญนะคะที่จะพาทุกท่านมาทำความเข้าใจกับแนวคิด NbS หรือว่า Nature Based Solutions กันมากยิ่งขึ้นนะคะว่าแนวคิดนี้คืออะไรและมีบทบาทอย่างไรในการช่วยให้เมืองสามารถที่จะตั้งรับและปรับตัวต่อการเปลี่ยนแปลงสภาพภูมิอากาศได้อย่างยั่งยืนนั่นเองค่ะซึ่งหัวข้อในวันนี้นะคะนั่นก็คือ setting the themes NbS กับการตั้งรับปรับตัวของเมืองค่ะซึ่งในโอกาสนี้นะคะสปีกเกอร์ของเราก็พร้อมแล้วนะคะ so now ladies and gentlemen please join me to welcome our special speaker Dr Jianbin Wang Chief Innovations Officer from Water Sensitive City Institute from Monash University Australia
Hello, yeah. Savadi Krop, Pengjo Jianbin Krop from Monash University, Australia, Indi Ditai Ruja, Kokun Sanrat Oka. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share our experience. In this morning, we have heard the what and why. And I'm here to talk about the how. Okay, so acknowledging every country has its unique biophysical context and the cultural and the social institutional context. So they're all doing nature-based solutions differently, and that is the correct way to go. So today I'm sharing the Australian way of doing this, and I'll be using a combination of Australian examples, but also our collaboration with Asian countries like Thailand, China, and Singapore. So I'll be straight to the point. So the way we think the nature-based solutions can work for us to create urban resilience in the urban context is to build a multifunctional hybrid infrastructure. Okay. So let me break this down for you. Why we need a multifunctional? Because we have a range of challenges that we all have to deal with in any city in the world. We have water pollution, you have drought, floods, river degradation, and urban heat. Right? And the last thing we want to do is to develop a single-dimensional solution that tend to shift the problems and create unintended consequences. I'll give you an example. Engineers trying to conquerize our urban rivers at the cost of losing biodiversity, and the objective, they think it can increase the flood drainage efficiency. But what we realize is that the solution of conquering urban rivers is not solving the flooding problems. It's merely shifting the flooding problems from the upstream to downstream and potentially cause more problems. So what we need is a holistic approach to address these interconnected water-related challenges in an integrated way. And of course, with the introduction of climate change, we're going to get exacerbate, high-intensity rainfall is going to generate more flooding, and we also get compounding events. What is compounding events? It's because coastal flooding could be coupled with sea level rise, and extended drought could be coupled with heat waves, urban heat waves. And on top of this, we also have to deal with the uncertainty, right? Because both drought and flood could happen in the same city and sometimes in the same year, right? So instead of trying to bet or gamble on one particular climate change scenarios, we may as well build a multifunctional system because it doesn't matter happening a drought or flood happening next year. We always have a solution ready for it. So that is why we need a multifunctional. And the second question you may ask is why we need a nature-based solution. Well, that's because nature is multifunctional. And it also because the wisdom of nature enable us to learn and deal with these interconnected environmental challenges. And that's why we need nature. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we can use nature-based solutions to build climate resilience? Then we solve multiple problems in one go. Right? It's counter the loss of biodiversity we see every day due to urbanization and industrialization. Okay, the third question is why hybrid? By hybrid, we really mean we're using a combination of nature-based solution and engineering solutions. We are not black and white. We not drop one and use the other. We use both of them. And the reason is that the engineering solution will enable us to increase the efficiency in land use because we're all dealing with these challenges in a very tight urban environment. Just like 20 years ago when we studied, we have to carry a Walkman, we carry a phone, we carry a laptop, but now we just simply carry one phone. It's because the engineering model allows us to do that, the integrated multifunction into one single system. And the second reason we need a hybrid system is because eventually we are not developing a standalone solution. We have to integrate the solution into existing urban environment, which is largely another engineering environment. That's why we need engineering. Okay. So I think that those three questions probably address some of the burning concerns you may have. And now I'm going to give you some real examples. What is actually a multifunctional hybrid infrastructure? So this is one example in Australia. As you can see that we made the same mistake that I criticized at the beginning of this presentation, is we built like kilometers and kilometers of concrete channels. And you can see the channels has only single use, which is conveying floods, only when it rains, okay? So, but what we have done is why not we restore that concrete channel back to the nature form with the meandering patterns, and we build pool and riffles to keep water there, so that we can progressively reestablish both the in-stream and also the repairing vegetations, which eventually bring back the flora and fauna that we see in the nature ecosystem. But at the same time, we are able to maintain the same flood conveyance capacity to satisfy the original purpose of the project. As you can see, we monitor the progress development of the project, and the ecosystem is progressively established over time. And if you start to compare with a conventional gray engineering solution with a multifunctional hybrid solution, you will find that the engineering ones tend to be single function, therefore bring a single benefit, while multifunctional hybrid solutions because of multiple benefits due to this multifunctionality. And the value of engineering solutions tend to depreciate over time the moment you commission it, while the nature-based solutions will start to increase its value and the functionality and efficiency over time as the ecosystem progressively establishes itself. Okay. And of course, the cost in engineering solutions tend to be quite high in general, depending on how we design it, but the nature-based solution is generally low. The only downside we can think of is the commissioning, right? The engineering solution, for example, if you build a wastewater treatment plant, it's very likely to give you an immediate effect since commissioning. But nature-based solution, we have to have patience for it to take effect over time. Okay, you may ask the question, does nature-based solution to be that big? Or it has to be a huge wetlands or waterways? The answer is no. You can build this as small as a single urban tree. And this is an example in Melbourne. As you can see, you can't see it. But anyway, the tree pit is sunken. Right? You can see from the cross-section, the soil surface is actually lower than the road surface. And at the interface, there's openings, so that every time it rains, the stormwater generated from the road surface wash into the tree pit first. So water get attenuated and treated, progressively percolate downward through the soil profile, but also through the tree roots before the clean water is picked up by the perforated pipes that is underneath. And so what it essentially does is that every time it rains, the tree will get a drink because of stormwater. So it doesn't rely on human to actively, manually to irrigate, as we can see in the raised tree pit that everywhere in the most of the cities in the world. In this case, because the tree get a better water, it also get a nutrients that is carried by the stormwater in terms of nitrogen, phosphorus. We get a much better and healthier root system. And that leads to a better and healthy canopy, as you can see here. And if we line up the whole street with such a tree pit, we're going to get a really good microclimate benefits to mitigate urban heat. So that's where the multifunctional and multiple benefit comes in. Okay, so in the rest of this presentation, I'm going to give you 5 scenarios where you can use nature-based solutions to deal with the existing and the emerging challenges in urban environment. The first one is stormwater pollution. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that the stormwater is not clean. It carries a lot of pollutions that we generate in the urban environment due to our day-to-day activities. Driving cars, the human activities, and all kind of that generate pollution. So this helicopter image gives you an example of Melbourne. So that's Melbourne. We have a huge bay we call Port Phillip Bay. So the city is developing around the bay. But as you can see, the bay has a very tiny mouth connecting to the ocean. So which means the tidal effect of the ocean is not strong enough to take the pollution from the bay out to the ocean. So the bay is more likely to behave like a lake. So which means that all the stormwater pollution is accumulated in this lake, as you can see from these images here. That's how much sediment is carried by the waterway through the urban environment and discharged into the bay. Okay. So through the 20 years of environmental modeling, and we find that if we want to sustain the environmental quality and ecological value of this bay, we have to reduce our total nitrogen discharge by 1,000 kilograms from our 1993 discharge levels. Okay? So we can meet half of that by upgrading our Western treatment plant, as you can see here, by upgrading the conventional treatment system, secondary treatment system, to a membrane-based, and also recycle that wastewater. But the challenge is that how do we remove the other 500 kilograms from the stormwater? That's the challenge. And that's exactly why back at Monash University, we set up a lab called FOB. And it's looking at using nature-based solutions to basically remove the total nitrogen, total phosphorus, including heavy metals from the stormwater before it discharges into the bay. Okay? Why we have this idea? Because we think because the stormwater is generated from the impervious surfaces of inner city. And often you will find a green space next to the impervious area of the city. So why not we make a good use of that green space to make it multifunctional? And that's why we develop a barrier retention system. Some countries refer as rain gardens or constructed wetlands to perform that role. And with the engineering marvel, we're able to really break it down to a tiny planter box, as you can see here. It's less than 1 square meters. And what we're doing here is using that planter box as a biofiltration to intercept the downpipe from the buildings. Therefore, that allows us to integrate this system in a very dense, tiny urban environment. And what's really interesting is it allows us to plant vegetations, climbers in this case, so we can beautify those really tiny urban spaces that desperately need greeneries in those environments. And we see this as a public urban furniture. And the next example I want to show you is this one is Singapore, part of the Singapore ABC Water Program, one of the early pilot projects. So what we have done with Singapore government is that we convert what used to be a grass, as you can see, have very low value landscape grass, into a sunken rain garden as part of the housing estate. So how this works is the drainage pipes taking the stormwater from the housing estate need actually discharge into rain garden first. So water is attenuated and treated by the vegetation, the soils. I can see the cross section before the clean water discharged into concrete canals. And that water is eventually harvested in the Marina Barrage and Marina Reservoir, which is the major water supply reservoir for the Singapore government. And what's really interesting, as you can see from the photo on the top right, is that we work with the National Board of Singapore to integrate a park connector, and that is going through this rain garden. I just make it very popular and let people understand the power of nature-based solution and what it can do to the community and for the country. So the next project you probably see a lot of relevance in Bangkok is that we actually use the space underneath the elevated road and use gravity to improve the quality of transport runoff, which is very dirty, as you can see from this photo here. A lot of suspended sediment, a lot of like a rubber, a lot of heavy metals. If we don't deal with this, all this pollution is going to be washed out into the canals, into the waterways. So what we have done here is that we use gravity to build a sedimentation chamber to dissipate the energy and to drop the largest sediments and then divert that water into a biofilter. You can call it a rain garden or a biofiltration or bioretention system. By using gravity to do the work, there's no energy input to it. And after that, the clean water goes back to the drainage, which it can be harvested or discharged in the waterway. And interestingly, in this case, we are able to find a lot of the shade-loving plants, so we can integrate the system as part of the landscape that underneath these infrastructures. Next one, I'm going to talk about combined sewer flows, which we see on a daily basis in Bangkok and or maybe other cities in Thailand as well. In this case, we help city of Kunshan in China, which is just next to Shanghai, to build what we call stormwater planter box. And the idea is to solve these very old urban areas, which is designed based on combined sewers, and they have a combined sewer flows every year because of lack of drainage and the historical decision made over the years. And so what we're trying to do is that given it is very hard and very expensive to separate a combined sewer, particularly for those old residential estates, maybe what we can do is to intercept those downpipe and harvest that stormwater so that a majority of that stormwater never goes into the combined sewer. And that's how we can help them to reduce combined sewer flows, because 90% of stormwater never goes there. But how do we use that stormwater? We want to use that stormwater to build a public furniture. In this case, it's a planter box, but it's also a seatings and support a range of ornamental plants to help this community to increase more greeneries in this very tight urban environment. And we also tried to introduce similar idea 3 years ago to the city of Ryan as part of our regional, our RUCAS project. It's called Resilient Urban Center and Surrounds Program, funded by Australian government. And we're trying to offer a solution to these emerging challenges from the Ryan city. And they are urban heat, flooding, and very frequent combined sewer overflows. As you can see, there are virtually no trees, no vegetation in those streets. So the strategy we developed for City of Ryan is that it's called a green canyon strategy. Instead of just looking at the buildings or just look at the street itself, we actually want to look at the space sandwiched by the two buildings as an urban canyon. And if we look at this way, there's a lot of things we can do with that. So what we have done is that we want to build a stormwater planter box that is harvesting the water coming down from the buildings and used as a planter. So all the cafes, shops on the ground floor can use that furniture as a partition to separate the sittings, tables from the traffic. But at the same time, we also want to introduce tree pits so that we make sure the stormwater generated from the streets, from the roads, don't go into the combined sewer. It actually goes to the tree pits and infiltrate to the ground. And if we can tackle the stormwater generated from the buildings, from the road, we can remove a significant amount of stormwater which will otherwise end up in the combined sewer. And that is causing the combined sewer overflows. Okay. But hopefully, City of Ryan can implement this strategy at some point in the future. And third scenario I want to talk about is the water resource. Because if we know how do we use nature-based solutions to manage water quality, the next logical step is to say whether we can harvest them, because it's clean water. If we let it go, it will be a waste. That's exactly what we're trying to do in Melbourne. Of course, the major driver in Melbourne is that we are projecting to have about 8 million people by the mid-century of this century. Okay. So the key question we have to ask, everybody has to ask, is that do we have enough water to support 8 million people? Well, probably don't. We don't have. Well, the conventional engineering approach would be that, well, can we divert water from other catchment? Just build a very long pipelines and take the water away from other users because they are rural. We can possibly bully them. I'm just kidding. But that's not what we want to do, right? We want to think about, can the city support itself? We talk about self-sustaining a lot, and this is exactly what we're trying to do. So the research we have done is to show within the city boundary how much water we actually consume for drinking, how much water can actually generate within our city boundary, and how much wastewater we can generate. And if you simply do a math to add up the stormwater and wastewater, they far exceeds the amount of drinking water required from our city. So technically speaking, we don't need to have divert water from anywhere. If we can recycle the stormwater and wastewater well, we'll be self-efficient in terms of water supply. And that's exactly what Melbourne has been doing. And this is one example to show how do we use a courtyard landscape as a constructed wetlands of these buildings to harvest the stormwater from the building roofs, pavement, and discharge into wetland, as you can see from the cross-section. So water moving horizontally through those plants, and the water gets cleaned before the clean water is stored in the underground tank. And how that water is reused? The water is used to support irrigation, general cleansing of the pavement, but also toilet flushing. At the same time, it is a public landscape. And if I don't tell you this function, you probably never realize it is actually a stormwater treatment wetlands. So next one I want to show you is a relatively large scale. This is about 1 hectare wetlands that taking water from that urban waterways, and by gravity, we're able to divert that water going through this wetland, like a snaking around, and the clean water is discharged into this pond. And by doing so, we're able to remove a lot of stormwater pollutants. As you can see here, 90% of total suspended solid and 80% of total forest. But most importantly, we use this water to replace the potable consumption which would otherwise use to irrigate this park. Okay, so a lot of savings for the local government for potable water conservation. But at the same time, we increase the ecological values and building an ecological habitat, because what used to be in this place is just pure grass, have only one function, low ecological value. But we turn that into a wetland, natural wetlands, but also have a stormwater harvesting and treatment functions. So attract a lot of birds, as the gentleman talked about this morning, and also fish, frogs, dragonflies. We have a whole ecosystem going on in the urban environment. So this is a decentralized water master plan, and not master plan, the status of play, as you can see for the city of Melbourne. Each of the drops represent already completed either stormwater harvesting programs or wastewater recycling program. They work hand in hand with the centralized water supply system in the city. That is the thing help us to deal with the population growth in the future without overhauling the major water supply infrastructure in the city. So the first one, I know this must be very relevant to the RD colleagues here, flood resilience. And the way we try to do this, it requires a completely change of mindset from the engineering approach. So one example I want to show you in Melbourne is that, how do we actually increase our flood resilience? The conventional way would say, okay, can we change our pipelines from a 1 in 2 year to maybe 1 in 20 year? And then we'll be done with it. But it's very expensive, so we spend all this money building an underground pipe that, technically speaking, only gets full in every 20 years. And people see nothing about it, because every buried underground. Another way of looking at this is that, maybe we should just upgrade the pipe into 1 in 5 years, and we spend the rest of the money beautifying the landscape above ground and making it multifunctional so that people can benefit from this. And this is exactly what's happening here. So this road, we convert a central median into a sunken. It's not raised, it's sunken, and it's a flush curve, as you can see. So basically, there's no curves. So all the water runs from the road surfaces and the adjacent houses that flows into the center median. Minor events, small events, water will get penetrate in underground, get treated before the clean water is stored and harvested in the lake downstream. For bigger events, this entire central swell is a flood conveyance corridor. Right? So it helps us to convey the flood to the downstream, but just not in the conventional sense, not in the pipes, but in the overland flow format. The beauty of this is that we're going to have a much more benefit in terms of passive irrigating the trees. You can see how the trees are growing crazy to the trees on the other side, because they all plant at the same time. Right? The shade created by the trees give us a lot of microclimate benefits and amenity for the local community. Okay. And this is an example in China, in the same city called Kunshan. This project was built nearly 10 years ago. It's a major endeavor because we built a multifunctional corridor for the city of Kunshan along a 40-kilometer long elevated ring road that's framing part of the key city. So how this works is that the gray represents the traffic, which you see in Bangkok all the time. The green is both a landscape but also a wetlands nested within the green corridor. And the blue is the canal, is the waterways. So every time it rains, the water discharge from the gray infrastructure discharge into the wetland first. So water get attenuated, treated before the clean water discharge slowly into the blue corridors. And due to extreme floods, the water level in the blue corridor will start to rise, the inundated part of the green corridor, to increase the flood attenuation and conveyance capacity. So that's how we make this gray, green, blue corridor works. And the beauty of this is not engineering solution. It's a hybrid and it's completely blended into this urban environment. The next project I want to show you is the Kunshan Forest Park. This park, you can see they have huge water bodies. And I see similar water bodies in Lumpini Park all the time. And as you go there, you probably notice all the water bodies of Lumpini Park is disconnected from the external canals by either sandbags or gates. I suspect the reason is that they don't want the pollution from the canals to make the water quality in the lake bad. Okay? So they're doing the same thing in Kunshan before the project. But the problem with that is once you isolate the lake from the rest of the city canal system, the lake will never be able to participate in the flood mitigation. That's the downside of this. And the water quality is not really good because the water is not moving. It's stagnant. So in this project, we're able to convince the government to build a series of constructed wetlands, as you can see here, as part of the public landscape. So we demonstrate that the water in this lake can be recirculated through the wetlands to look after its quality, so that those lakes can participate in the flood mitigation scheme of the city. And for this polder, it immediately increased the flood mitigation rate from 1 in 20 years to 1 in 50 years by doing basically nothing, just reconnecting those water bodies to the external canals. And this thing got really exciting because, and then the World Bank is interested in this, ask, how did Kunshan actually make this decision, right? I had a conversation with the Kunpi Park this morning, and they want to understand, and then I say, okay, so the mayor of Kunshan just say, we have to do this without a thorough benefit cost analysis to build a business case. They just think this is a good thing to do. It probably work. So retrospectively, we help World Bank together to develop an economic analysis. And what we find, the benefit cost ratio for this park, in real terms, not before the project, this is after the project, is 2.7, which means that every dollar this Kunshan government spend in building this park is generating $2.7 back to the entire society. So what a great success. Okay, I think this is probably the last one, the urban heat mitigation, which is very, very much relevant to any cities in Thailand. So I just want to quickly show you in how the research done in Australia to support the strategies we developed today. Is that we find, of course, every country find this, we're able to just quantify this, is the shading from the trees, and together with the evapotranspiration effect of the trees, help us significantly reduce the land surface temperature, as you can see from the thermal images. So the key idea is that we have to keep our trees in the landscape. And that's not enough, because we also find in a green space such as grass, if it is dry, in the heat waves, the dry grass have the same surface temperature as the concrete. So it's pointless. You have to irrigate the grass to increase the moisture level in the soil for it to cool down the city. Right? So those two are very important strategies that we developed from research. Keep trees in the landscape, but also keep water in the landscape. Don't let it go. So this example exactly showing how this strategy work in real terms. This is one of the car parks in Melbourne, and as you can see, why we're building this is everybody torture if we park our cars in the heat summer, right? After 1 hour, we all go back to the car. It's like a steam. So what we're trying to do is to build a structural tree pit. So what I mean by that is that since it's a car park, we want all the loadings, the bearings of the car, the traffic, to penetrate down to the underlying structures, not into the soil. So the soil is never compacted. We have a well-irrigated, well-aerated the soil to support a much healthier and better roots. And that allow us for the trees to grow into a much healthier, larger canopies. Right? And because the car park is actually sloping towards the tree pit. So those structures allow us to collect and treat the stormwater for irrigation passively, but also keep the soil loose forever. And then those trees are growing much, much quicker than the conventional approach. Okay, so the next one I'll show you is again in the Kunshan in China. In this case, we show that we can actually introduce a constructed wetlands in the public plaza that help us to manage stormwater as one of the functions, but also help us to recirculate a large and ornamental pool, as you can see from the photo on the top right, so that they don't have to use potable water to maintain that water feature. Everything's done and maintained by stormwater. What is really interesting is that we actually developed and designed this into a mini aquatic botanic garden, because we square these things up. Each square is occupied by one native aquatic species. And we also introduce, a swamp cypress, right? It's trying to make it as a mini swamp forest. And we have a lot of resistance from the government. Basically, they say, the swamp cypress never grow in the water because they can also grow on the land. But if you design plants properly, they can also grow in the water. And this is what sees in 2019. See how much canopy shading coming from the trees. When people go to that plaza, in the summer, they only go to two places. They even go to Starbucks, or they go to under these trees. That's how successful we see it. And because we build this concrete paths really wide, we're actually inviting the kids to come in. They can see the dragonflies, they can see the little turnipfish. I don't know who raised them in this. But they start to appreciate nature, because we bring the nature back to the city through the combination of engineering and the nature-based solution. Oh, okay, one more, ecological restoration. Okay, what I want to show you this is because we are also working with DCC and BMA on the owner park, which is very excited, so watch this space. But similar project we have done in the same city, Kunshan, is that we're able to transform what used to be a rubbish dumping ground underneath these electricity transmission corridors into a very nice, floodable urban park that when it's not flooded, it actually using the wetland to continue to circulate the water in the waterway to improve the water quality. Bear in mind, this is used to be a landfill. Okay, that's what we have done. So I want to show you a quick video so you can see how this vision come in water from an idea to reality. Okay, that park is meant to be like a public showroom because it demonstrates 18 different type of nature-based solution, how we design, implement them in the public environment. Of course, we're happy to share the case studies and some of the design technical details to you if you're interested in. I think today we talk about ONWR, RAD, DWR. I'm just kidding, right? So those scenarios actually represent some of the jurisdiction and responsibility of one particular Thai organization. So maybe one of the ways, as we chatted with Kun Pipap today, you realize it's so fragmented. Maybe one of the ways we can unite all of them is through this multifunctional hybrid infrastructure. And we are really happy to continue that conversation after this. But I want to apologize to IOCN because IOCN asked me to give a definition of NbS in this presentation, and I haven't done that, and there's a reason, right? So this slide shows you, again, all of the nature-based solutions can be done anywhere in the world at any scale. We just need to know how to design them, okay? And today we show you some of the cases from building scale to precinct scale all the way to the city scale. And the reason I haven't fulfilled the request from IOCN is because we don't want to give you a boundary to contain your thinkings. We want you to be open-minded. And that is because nature-based solutions are not the same as nature-based technologies. So what is the difference? Nature-based technologies, you can say green roofs, bioswale, rain gardens, constructed wetlands, they're all nature-based technologies. But they are not nature-based solutions because nature-based solutions include a carefully crafted strategy to address a specific problem. That's why we call it a solution. It is a solution to a specific problem. Right? Example will give you to you. When people get sick, when they go to a doctor to see the doctor, they need to get a diagnosis of what the underlying problem is. Right? And then the doctor develop a therapy, which including prescribing the medicine. Right? Of course, the patient can go to the pharmacy to buy medicine. It might cure it by chance. But over time, right, they probably miss the underlying real cause and potentially cause more damage to them. Right? That's why the strategy is very, very important and essential. The whole real strength of nature-based solution lies in the strategy behind them, not in the technology. So on that note, we will be running a workshop later this afternoon and tell you exactly how do we convert nature-based technology to a nature-based solutions. And I look forward to see you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Dr. Jianbin Wang, Chief Innovations Officer from the Water Sensitive City Institute from Monarch University, Australia very much. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, in the afternoon sessions that we will have the technicals, right, in the afternoon session. So if anyone here would like to join, so you can register at the register desk in front of this hall. Okay แล้วก็ในช่วงนี้ we're going to have the Q&A, right? Just a little bit for anyone here would like to ask the questions. Okay, right there.
Thank you very much for your very informative presentation. I have one question because right now I'm doing a few projects on urban heat mitigation. And of course, we are looking at the possibility of involved nature-based solution to mitigate urban heat. But one thing that we found that when we talk about urban heat mitigation, in the larger scale is kind of possible to do in Bangkok. But when we look deeper into informal settlement, so it's quite hard because they don't even have any space for plant a tree. So any suggestion, like a more practical solution for those who live in the informal settlement area or a very cramped area? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I got asked the same question by a student from NIDA 2 months ago. And they are looking at informal settlement in Klong Tay TEI, okay. And very fortunate to receive some photos from them. I really appreciate and understand the challenges over there. But I think there will be a lot of solutions. It just depends on how we design them. The trap we don't want you to fall in is that I can only use nature-based solution. That will be wrong. That will limit thinking to the same effect as I give you a definition of NbS, right? If you free up from that, I'm just thinking aloud here. Maybe we can think about a way to harvest rainwater and bring that water to the roof. So if we can constantly keep the roof wet, the evaporative, loss by the water will cool down the roof surfaces, right? And that will just maybe, I don't know to how many degrees we can reduce, but that potentially causes a lot of significant mitigation from urban heat by doing nothing, basically, right? You're not even paving a green roof. You just bring the water back, maybe some energy, right? But that could work. But apart from that, maybe there's many ways it can work. We have to leverage on the creativity of the Thai people, maybe also work with international players to find a solution for it. Yeah. Thank you.
โอเคเรียนเชิญคุณพิพัฒน์ด้วยนะคะ
ครับผมขออนุญาตเป็นภาษาไทยแล้วกันนะครับต้องขอบพระคุณมากสำหรับ presentation ที่มีคุณค่ามากนะครับสำหรับกรุงเทพเนี่ยเราโชคดีมากเราเป็นในอดีตนะแล้วก็อนาคตอยากให้เป็นแบบนั้นกลับไปเป็นอดีตนั่นแหละก็คือเราเป็นเวนิสตะวันออกเราเคยเป็นพื้นที่ชุ่มน้ำทั้งกรุงเทพเลยนะครับเรามีคลองเยอะแยะมีทางไหมที่เราจะรื้อฟื้นคลองเหล่านี้เนี่ยให้กลับขึ้นมามีชีวิตชีวาใหม่สิ่งที่ท่านบอกว่าเราไม่มีพื้นที่ใช่ปลูกพื้นที่สีเขียวความจริงเนี่ยคลองเหล่านี้มันทำเป็นพื้นที่สีเขียวได้ในคลองก็ยังทำได้อันนี้เป็นเรื่องบ่นนะครับเรื่องที่เป็นคำถามจริงๆเป็นอย่างนี้ว่าในการทำสวนสวยๆเหล่านั้นเนี่ยมันมีทางไหมที่เราจะไม่ทำลายธรรมชาติดั้งเดิมของมันก่อนที่จะทำให้มันสวยเพราะใน presentation ของท่านเนี่ยมันมีภาพก่อนดำเนินการมันเป็นพื้นที่ชุ่มน้ำบางส่วนอยู่แล้วแล้วเวลาเราจะก่อสร้างเราต้องรื้อมันออกสปีชีส์เก่าอยู่ไหนนิเวศวิทยาของเดิมอยู่ที่ไหนเราจะมีวิธีไหมที่จะไม่ไปทำลายของเก่าแล้วไปสร้างของใหม่ขึ้นมาโดยน้ำมือมนุษย์อันนี้เป็นคำถามที่สองไม่เป็นคำถามสำหรับทุกคนแหละครับตกลงพื้นที่ชุ่มน้ำหรือภาระที่จะทำลดเรื่องการรองรับปรับตัวให้เข้ากับสภาวะอากาศที่มันเปลี่ยนแปลงไปเนี่ยมันเป็นเรื่องของส่วนรวมหรือเป็นเรื่องของประชาชนด้วยเรื่องของ NbS หลายๆมาตรการเป็นเรื่องของการทำให้ตึกเป็นพื้นที่สีเขียวแต่ตึกนั้นมันไม่ใช่ของสาธารณะมันเป็นของประชาชนถึงเวลาหรือยังที่เราจะสามัคคีกันทำนะครับเอกชนต้องมีบทบาทในการเปลี่ยนอาคารที่อยู่อาศัยให้เป็นพื้นที่สีเขียวไม่ว่าจะแนวตั้งแนวนอนอะไรก็แล้วแต่โดยเฉพาะอย่างยิ่งในเรื่องของการนำแนวคิดเรื่องไบโอสเวลมาใช้พื้นที่เล็กๆริมถนนหรือกลางถนนเองใช่ไหมครับท่านครับมันมีอยู่เยอะนะแล้วเราก็ไม่ได้ใช้ให้มันส่งคุณค่าแทนที่ว่าเราจะทำไบโอสเวลให้น้ำมันไหลลงไปในเกาะเหล่านั้นได้เราไปเทปูนก่อนแล้วเราไปปลูกต้นไม้แล้วมันจะทำประโยชน์ได้อย่างไรอันนี้ก็เป็นเรื่องบ่นอีกนะครับขออนุญาตเท่านี้ครับขอบพระคุณครับ
Well, thank you very much. I don't know how much value I can add to that a great speech because I also learned a lot from the wisdom of King Ram Nai and the power of nature-based solutions, but also the monkey chick ideas, right? So I think the answer is yes. But if you challenge me to develop a solution in 10 seconds for a 100 years problem, I probably can't help. But I can give everybody confidence that if we work together, we can certainly do what you have just said. And multifunction is the way to bring everybody together, not just a different part of government agencies, but also private and public sectors. And that is important. And through the power of design, we can do that. We can certainly do that. And the idea is we probably don't have to go for super large scale like a Banjo Kiddie Park. We can always start from small because the condominium hotels are being built in Bangkok every day. Those are the opportunities if we don't capture that. Yeah. So I completely echo to what you're saying. Thank you.
Okay, we have another. Okay.
ขอบคุณวิทยากรนะผมมีคำถามนิดเดียวครับว่าท่านมีการคำนวณ optimize ของความเข้มฝนที่จะรองรับในพื้นที่ที่คุณทำ nation based solution นะคือความเข้มข้นแค่ไหนเพราะว่าที่ออสเตรเลียกับประเทศไทยมันอาจจะต่างกันเยอะผมอยากทราบหลักเกณฑ์หรือว่าวิธีการที่ท่านคำนวณมาเพราะมันสัมพันธ์กับค่าใช้จ่ายตรงนี้จะได้ประยุกต์ใช้กับกรุงเทพบ้านเราขอบคุณครับท่าน
Thank you very much. I think you may come from R&D. I could be completely wrong, but I got the question from R&D all the time. Yes. So the reason for different rainfall patterns is about how do you develop a cost-effective curves so that you don't build something in the marginalized areas. You're trying to capture the most cost-effective areas. And the ratio I can share with you in Melbourne for a barrel retention system is between 1% to 2%. So every 100 square meter of catchment, you only need to build a 2 square meter barrel retention system, which will be able to capture close to 90% of the entire catchment. You don't have to capture 100% because that's just a waste of money. And use the same approach, you can develop a similar curve for Bangkok. If based on a 1.4 meter annual rainfall, my best guesstimate could be between 5 to 8%. Right? Singapore is about 10%. So we have done for Singapore in Kunshan. I'm sure we can work together to do something for Bangkok. So that's the reason why we choose the ratio between the catchment areas and the treatment system areas. And the cost, we were having conversation with the Lao delegation, who's also in this room. Everybody concerned about cost. And I always responded saying, this is not building a new system. It just simply changed the way we design and build landscape. Right? So we don't tend to think this is an additional thing we have to do. It is not. It is a different way of doing the landscape. Just like our phones, right? We use Nokia 10 years ago. We now use smartphones. Is it more expensive? It is, yes. But it brings multiple benefits. Right? We don't try to overhaul the entire Bangkok overnight. That is not possible. But what we want to do is to capture the urban renewal process or any new development to make sure the new design thinking's implementation come on board. It's just part of the project budget because I'm doing my green gardens in a different way. And then over time, if you think about 5% urban renewal, over 20 years, the entire Bangkok will be what we call water sensitive or become a monkey chicks. It's a matter of get started rather than just walk the talk, rather just talk. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for today. And of course, thank you to our speaker, Mr. Jianbin Wang, very much.